What is up? This is Driven Dynasty. My name is Levi, and we are here to talk Superflex, quarterback, and tight end dynasty rankings today. So we are going to start things off with the QB rankings. We will kick things off with the S tier. Josh Allen is my 101 in dynasty startup drafts. He is an elite quarterback at the NFL level, MVP caliber player every single year. He has tons of rushing upside, has shown consistently that he is a difference maker at the position. He's scoring 23 points per game so far this season, and he rarely gets injured, which is a huge plus in Dynasty. It's something that he's known for, and so he will be my number one QB in these rankings. Next up, we have Lamar Jackson, another guy that we have a long track record of being highly productive, having a ton of rushing upside. He arguably has higher upside than Josh Allen on a season-long basis. However, Lamar also has a history of injuries, and when he does get injured, they usually ruin his whole season. So for Lamar, I'm going to keep him at number 2, even though he is the highest upside QB, I think, in the whole NFL. And then we have Drake May at number 3. He is a young QB and MVP level caliber player so far this year. He's been leading this mediocre Patriots offense to 9-2 on the season. And of course, I'm referring to the offense surrounding May being mediocre. He, of course, has been elite so far this season. Many people have him as the Dynasty 101. I have him in the same tier. I will not fault anybody for moving him up to the 101. However, my philosophy with these high-end quarterbacks is that if I can pick between them, I want the option that I know is both an elite talent at the NFL level and has a history of production. There is so much volatility at the quarterback position, and it is so hard to tell who will be productive from year to year. And when you invest in one of these young QBs right at the top of the draft, think CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray a few years ago, and then they just don't produce the same, or they trail off in their production, or they even lose their job outright. Not saying that Drake May is likely to lose his job as the starter of the Patriots. However, there is definitely a possibility that he could remain in that 19, 20 point per game arena and not ever reach the pinnacle, that 25 plus point per game threshold for these high-end QBs in Lamar and Josh Allen. So that is why I have Drake May as my number 3. Totally understand if you want to move him higher than that. However, I just like to insulate my value into those more proven assets when we are talking about the most valuable players in all of fantasy football. At the top of the A tier, I have Patrick Mahomes, my QB4 in Dynasty. He is just an elite talent at the QB position, and nobody is more insulated than Patrick Mahomes. Even in his 2 down seasons where he was scoring so bad as a low-end QB1 in fantasy football, just horrible production, he was still priced in at least the second round, the end of the second round in Dynasty startups. He is just such a valuable fantasy asset, and stuff would have to go very, very, very wrong for him to lose a significant amount of value. Next up is Jalen Hurts. He has been elite for fantasy football year after year, not quite to the level of a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, but just shy of it. This year, he's scoring around 21 points per game. He's only 27 years old, and so I think he's a great asset to own in Dynasty. I'm not incredibly worried about the tush push being banned. If it does, then he might take some sort of hit to his fantasy production, but the Eagles offense has just been playing so slow. It has been run heavy these past 2 years, and so there's a lot of upside for Jalen Hurts to score more fantasy points if the offensive environment shifts even just a little bit. Jaden Daniels, he's been hurt this year. I'm not knocking him down my boards for that. I still think that he's an elite young player who has rushing upside. I just think that is where he belongs, and this is where he belongs in the rankings right now. Like I was saying earlier, I just would prefer to have the highly insulated players over some of these younger players whose value could fluctuate more. Then we have Joe Burrow as my QB7 in Dynasty. He's coming back off of his injury. When he's healthy, he is an elite fantasy producer. The Bengals offense and their defensive situations are perfect for fantasy production, and I believe that he's going to come back into this Bengals offense and be very fantasy productive. However, the Bengals do, just as a team, have issues. The offensive line is horrible, and so that is why I can't have Burrow any higher than this, even though he is an elite talent and a highly insulated quarterback. The team environment is just also sort of a nightmare, even though it is beneficial for fantasy production. At number 8, I have Justin Herbert. He is another player who is just an elite pocket passing talent. He is somebody I was very interested in the offseason. I feel like he was being shorted, and just to a severe degree, considering how talented of a quarterback he is. He started off the season very hot. He showed more rushing upside than he has in a long time. However, this Chargers offense has fallen apart as the offensive line has taken many hits and their run game just continues to lose pieces. So Justin Herbert is somebody who, while he might not have as much upside for the rest of the season, going into the future, I think the Chargers are going to be a very, very good offense, and he's going to have a ton of scoring upside, just like he did early this season. And lastly in this tier is Jackson Dart. I do think that Dart is actually going to be valued higher than this by the community this offseason. Exciting rookie. Has been playing very well for a pretty mediocre New York Giants team. He's been doing well in the offense and being fantasy productive without Malik Neighbors. And I think there's a very large possibility that the Giants do try and add some receiving threat in addition to Neighbors this offseason. So there's a ton of upside for Jackson Dart. But same philosophy. I would just rather have these verified, 100% confident in the NFL talent of these other players like Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert over Dart. So I do think that I am just, by nature of my philosophy with these QBs, going to be low on Jackson Dart, lower than the consensus, and I am okay with that moving forward. Next up, we have the B tier. Baker Mayfield is my QB 10. I really like Baker. I feel like he is just such a competitor, and he does whatever it takes to win, whether it's scrambling, extending plays, doing whatever needs to be done for the team. And he has been pretty fantasy productive the last 2 years as well. He has shown himself to be at the very least, very serviceable and very solid QB at the NFL level. However, I think you can get him cheaper right now because not only is he injured, but this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense has just been decimated throughout this season with injuries. Hopefully, Bucky Irving coming back will help open up the offense and this passing attack. However, with Baker being down with an injury himself now, who knows what's going to happen. I think he's a great buy low. I really like the talent. I like the production. And hopefully, with a healthy Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, Baker can return to the top 5, top 6 scoring QB upside that he showcased last year. Next up, we have Brock Purdy. He has been a very solid quarterback for the 49ers. He gets the job done. I am not going to try and convince you that he is an absolutely elite NFL talent quarterback, but in the San Francisco 49ers offense with the elite weapons around him, he has been very consistently a low end to mid QB1 throughout the course of his career. And again, with these quarterbacks, I just would prefer to take the quarterback that I know is going to be productive, the quarterback that's more insulated, and we've seen more years of production, so we can be reassured that there's going to be less volatility or that they will be affected less by the natural volatility of the quarterback position. And then I have Caleb Williams and Bo Nix coming in at QB 12 and 13 in my rankings. Caleb Williams is just in such a good situation with Ben Johnson as his coordinator and all these elite young talents in the receiving core. And now that the run game is picked up as well, this offense is very good. However, Caleb Williams himself, you look at the metrics, you look at when he is forced to go off script and his efficiency on those plays, it's all just a little disappointing. I feel my gut says that if you put really any of the quarterbacks that I had ranked above Caleb Williams into his position, into the Bears offense right now, then they would be significantly outproducing what Caleb Williams is doing at this time. So even though Caleb Williams has been fairly productive at 19.4 points per game this season, I'm just not super convinced of the talent at the NFL level. He definitely has shown flashes. He definitely has talent. I just don't know if he is an elite NFL talent compared to some of these other quarterbacks that I have more confidence in. And then rounding out this B tier, we have Bo Nix, another player who has been fairly fantasy productive, is a younger player. He scored 18 points per game so far this season. However, when I looked at the Broncos schedule for the first half of the year compared to the second half of the year, the Broncos schedule was very front-loaded with easy matchups and back-loaded with more difficult matchups for this offense. That's why I will have him at the end of this B tier. Next up, we have our C tier, headed off by Jordan Love. Another player who is just very consistent, just like Brock Purdy. He's in a pretty good situation with the Green Bay Packers. However, their wide receiving core has also seen a lot of injuries. And so with someone like Jordan Love, I think that his production on a year-to-year basis is going to be much better than the roughly 16 points per game that we have seen this season. And so especially as this season is coming to a close and we're looking a little bit more into the future at next year, Jordan Love is just someone I expect a good bounce back from, and to whose value I think will increase as soon as the off season starts. Next, I have CJ Stroud. He is somebody that I am higher on than consensus. I know that he has not been producing very well at only 15 points per game this season. The Texans have some issues. Their offensive line was and is horrible. And that is something that they desperately need to fix. Their receiving core has taken a ton of time to develop and look more serviceable. Obviously, Nico Collins is elite, but Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel have taken some time to ramp up and really help out this offense. Christian Kirk even was injured for the beginning of the season, and so they didn't even have him to rely on. And so there were issues completely outside of CJ Stroud's control in this offense. I still think that he is a very good NFL quarterback, and that the Texans are going to build on what has happened these last few games. And once CJ Stroud is back in the lineup, I'm very excited to see what he can do. I do not think that Nick Mullins is a better quarterback than CJ Stroud. I just think that the receiving core has developed after CJ Stroud went down with his injury and is to a point where they can support this passing offense. And so I'm very excited for Stroud to see what he can do with this new and improved passing attack in the future. So next up, we have Dak Prescott. He is more productive than Love or Stroud. However, Prescott is, 32 years old. He will be 33 at the start of next season. He is scoring 20 points per game, which is an elite number. However, I have less confidence moving forward in this Dallas offense into the future. I hope that George Pickens re-signs with the Dallas Cowboys and gets a multi-year extension. And if he does, I think I would have to move him up a spot or two. However, the Cowboys passing attack with only Lamb and Ferguson, as we saw last year, was not anything to write home about. Dak is still, even if Pickens doesn't re-sign, he's going to be productive. However, without Pickens, I think it just caps his upside and the scoring potential of this Dallas offense. So Dak is somebody who could definitely move up these rankings if the situation pans out well for him. But right now, I'm going to stick with having him as my QB 16. Daniel Jones is next. He has been playing very well on this Colts offense. The Colts are just such a well-rounded, good offense, good offensive line, good running back, 3 very solid wide receivers, and a very, very good tight end in Tyler Warren. And so I don't believe that Daniel Jones is just like an elite talent at the quarterback position. I think he is one of the worst starting caliber quarterbacks in the NFL. But at the same time, all this Colts offense really needed was a starting caliber quarterback, not Gardner Minshew, not Anthony Richardson, but someone who could actually run this offense and be competent doing it. And so Daniel Jones, I believe, is just good enough, just barely good enough as an NFL quarterback to run this offense well and to get the job done like he has been this season. I expect him to get an extension from the Colts, a bigger contract, and that will insulate his value and lock him into a very, very good situation with this Colts offense. Next up, we have Jared Goff. He has not been quite as elite this season in terms of fantasy production. The Detroit offense has taken a bit of a step back since Ben Johnson left as the offensive coordinator. However, Goff is still producing as a solid, low-end QB1, high-end QB2 at 17 points per game. And so with Jared Goff, he's just a 31-year-old quarterback who isn't really giving you difference-making production. And so that's why he is going to be at the end of this C tier. Next up, we have the D tier, headed off by Sam Darnold. Darnold is somebody that I don't particularly want to start on a week-to-week basis. However, he is a quarterback that I have more confidence in having a job next year than most of the guys in this tier. Darnold's only at 15 points per game so far this season, which is not elite. It's serviceable. It'll get the job done. But again, I have more confidence in Darnold moving forward than many of these other quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence at number 20 overall, very similar. He's also at about 15 points per game. The real difference between these players is that Sam Darnold is throwing the ball to JSN. Trevor Lawrence, while he does have some high upside wide receivers in that receiving room, so far this year, he hasn't taken advantage of it. Trevor Lawrence is somebody that I am fading a little bit just as an NFL talent. I'm not super excited about. I think that you could easily have Trevor Lawrence over Sam Darnold. This is just how I have it in my rankings. Then my quarterback 21, Kyler Murray. I don't buy that Jacoby Brissett is just a much better quarterback than Kyler Murray. I think that they play very, very differently, and Kyler Murray is more of that take things slow get the run game going, use his legs on third downs, get first downs, get down the field, get time off the clock, and that's how he runs an offense. With Jacoby Brissett, it's been more of a Jameis Winston style air raid attack, just push the ball downfield. So with Kyler Murray, he's not necessarily beneficial to the fantasy assets in the offense, and I think that's why a lot of people are frustrated with Kyler. However, while Jacoby Brissett is more fantasy friendly to the assets in the offense, he is not necessarily somebody that is going to win games and be a starting NFL quarterback. So long story short, I don't think that Kyler and the Arizona Cardinals really just meshed well. Kyler is definitely talented. He has his strengths, but I don't think those complemented what Arizona was trying to do very well. Hopefully, Kyler can go to a different situation and get opportunity. We know that if Kyler is starting, he is a player who has a high upside as a fantasy asset and has a high floor as well with his rushing upside. Next, we have Cam Ward. He is looking better every week, and so he is somebody who has been moving up my rankings. He's still a rookie. I want to give him time to develop. However, I also don't want to shoot him up my boards as soon as he has a decent game like he did this week. So I'm going to be conservative with Cam Ward. I haven't really moved him a ton throughout this process. And so Cam Ward will stay right here as my quarterback 22. I am excited about the upside in Cam Ward, especially since he has just such an abysmal supporting cast around him in this Titans offense. Next up, Michael Penix. He did well this season when he was just force-feeding Drake London the ball. In games where they had difficulty getting Drake London the ball, Michael Penix really suffered. I don't know how much of it is that the ancillary pass catchers in this Falcons offense are just not worth much, or if it's Michael Penix being, a poor quarterback not being able to get them involved in the offense. So I definitely think that Penix is a better option than Kirk Cousins. However, if the Falcons do end up having an early pick this year in a draft class that has quite a few good quarterback prospects, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities for the Falcons to pick up another quarterback to compete with Penix. So Penix is someone that I don't have a ton of confidence in, but he has looked decent as a starting NFL quarterback so far this season. Unfortunately, he's out for the season, or it looks like he's out for the season. However, I'm not going to hold that against him, and I think that there's still a lot of upside being in this Falcons offense with Drake London and Bijan Robinson. Next up is J.J. McCarthy. He is just looking worse and worse every week. I think that I will move him below Bryce Young after the performance this Sunday. However, right now I do have him one spot ahead of Bryce Young. McCarthy is just in one of the best situations you could possibly hope to be in as an NFL quarterback, and he is not producing and not getting it done. Moving on to Bryce Young, he has had this is now his third year of opportunity with the Panthers, and just he has games and he has short stretches where he looks like he knows what he's doing and he can get the job done. He can support fantasy assets in the Carolina's Panthers offense. And other times it's just a train wreck and it's frustrating. So Bryce Young is still a young player. There is some upside here, but just every game that passes, my confidence in him is waning. I think that there is a decent chance that the Panthers could take a look at a quarterback in this draft as well. We will round things out here with the E tier. First up is Geno Smith as my QB 26. I just feel like he has been dealt a very bad hand by this Raiders offense. I mean, when your top wide receiver is Tyler Lockett, you know that you are in trouble. Next up, we have Tua. I think that there is more blame on Tua than there is on Geno for his team's performance so far this season. I feel like Tua has had better weapons and a slightly better offensive line and still has just not done much with them this season. And so I'm nervous for Tua. I think that, he probably is going to continue to be the Dolphins quarterback for at least another year. But in terms of being an NFL talent at the QB position, I'm feeling less and less confident in that every single game that I see from him. And lastly is Matthew Stafford. He has actually been very productive this year, 20 points per game with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. He's lighting it up. However, at almost 38 years old, I'm not sure how many more years Stafford is going to play, and there is always the chance that this season could be his last. And so Stafford is just going to close this tier. Even though he has been elite so far, we are playing Dynasty. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to anybody who is relying on one of these quarterbacks for production now or in the future. My condolences. I hope things work out for your dynasty team. For the tight ends, we have Trey McBride and Brock Bowers making up the S tier. Trey McBride was my tight end 1 coming into the season. He just has such a secure role in this Cardinals offense, elite target volume. He is an elite option as a tight end. Brock Bowers is another elite tight end in the league right now. He is just a little bit younger than Brock Bowers. However, Trey McBride is still only 26. He easily has 5 years left as an elite tight end in the NFL. And I just think that what I thought in the offseason is that the type of player that Trey McBride is going to make him a significantly more consistent option at the tight end position. Next up, we are going to move to the A tier. This is a bigger tier. Tyler Warren, number 3 tight end for me. Tucker Kraft will likely overtake Tyler Warren in my rankings once the offseason hits. As his injury starts to heal and we start looking towards 2026, I do think that I would rather have Tucker Kraft than a Tyler Warren. Warren's been elite for the Colts. He is, I think, a better real-life tight end than he is going to be a fantasy tight end, but he's still going to be a very good fantasy tight end in this electric Colts offense moving forward. And then we have Tucker Kraft, the lead receiver for the Green Bay Packers. His yak ability is incredible. His big play ability is incredible. And even though he doesn't get as much target volume as some of these other guys in this tier, he just simply does more with less. Next up, we have Oronde Gadsden. I've seen enough from Gadsden in this Chargers offense. It seems like he beat out QJ for a role in this pass catcher core. And so I've really liked what I've seen from him, and we've seen it more consistently than we have from a guy like Colston Loveland, who I'm also high on in this Bears offense. It took him a while to get on the field, and it just still feels like him and Luther Burden are being ramped up by this Bears coaching staff. And so I'm excited to see what Loveland can do down the stretch and in the future. Sam Laporta, he is just in a very good situation in this Lions offense. I think I would have him over Loveland if he wasn't injured and out for the rest of the year. Next up, we have George Kittle. He is an elite producer at the tight end position. However, he is 32 years old, going to be 33 next season, halfway through the season. And so much like with someone like Travis Kelce, it just becomes a question of when will he retire? How many years left does he have on my fantasy roster? And so I think that once the season wraps up, I'll probably push George Kittle down to the C tier. Next up, we have the B tier. Starting off with Dalton Kincaid as my tight end 9. He is just an enigma. He really is. He's on the field some games for 30% of snaps, but he gets like 5 targets for 60 yards and a touchdown. I don't know exactly what the Buffalo Bills are doing with him. I know that he's not the best blocking tight end in the NFL, but it is ludicrous how few snaps he gets some games. So far this season, Dalton Kincaid has scored 12.2 fantasy points per game, so he has been very productive, even more productive than Sam Laporta, but the very low snap count is just very concerning for me when it comes to Dalton Kincaid. Next up, we have Kyle Pitts. He has shown some flashes this year, has had some good games, has had games where he falls off the face of the earth. He's just not someone I'm super excited about. I think that his resurgence and production has been more on the back of there not being a competent wide receiver 2 in this Falcons offense, and so the offense has had to push the ball to him as opposed to him really earning a higher target share in this offense. Next up is Jake Ferguson. He is someone that I am lower on at this point. His stats for the season are still pretty good at 13.74 points per game, but the majority of that production came whenever CeeDee Lamb was not present in the offense. Over the past, I believe, 4 or 5 weeks since CeeDee Lamb has been back, his production has dropped to around 9 points per game. And so he is just not somebody that I really want to be starting in my tight end spot right now. He does have the upside if Pickens misses time, if Lamb misses time, if Pickens is moved to another team in this offseason. We will just have to see what happens with this Dallas offense. But as things stand, Ferguson for me is a pretty shaky start at the tight end position. Fannin, he has shown some upside. He might even be the best pass catcher in this Cleveland offense right now, which isn't exactly saying a ton. But I am impressed that he has been able to take a sizable role away from David Njoku, who is somebody I was also high on coming into this season. So he is going to stay here as my tight end 12. A young upside rookie, and we'll just have to see what happens with this Cleveland offense in the future. Dallas Goedert is my tight end 13. He's been fairly productive this season, but this Eagles offense is just so unpredictable. Next up is the C tier, and the C tier is mostly made up of young tight ends who have shown flashes or shown some potential, but haven't really elevated themselves into a starting caliber tight end for your fantasy teams as of yet. So first up, we have AJ Barner and Theo Johnson. Both of them have actually been fairly fantasy productive, scoring around 10 points per game in a PPR format and 12 points per game in half tight end premium scoring. Isaiah likely, upside play. Maybe Mark Andrews gets moved and he sees a bigger workload and a bigger role in this offense. The Ravens have just been struggling as a team and as an offense all year, mostly due to the Lamar Jackson injury. Next up, we have Brenton Strange, someone who is back from injury. He's still only 25 years old. He had a good game this week. Trevor Lawrence likes to throw to tight ends, but what is the upside going to be for him when Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter are on the field together and producing? Mason Taylor, he has just had so much opportunity this year and not really done much with it. He had pretty good draft capital, was a decent prospect, but he's not someone that I am super high on. I have a ton of confidence in, but still only 21, has a lot of time to grow and develop. Next up, Javonte Sanders. We've seen flashes from him at times in this Carolina offense. He was doing pretty well last season after the start of the season. Maybe 5 or 6 games in, he went on this run of 8 to 12 fantasy points per game for about a 6-game stretch, and then he got injured and was out for, I believe, the rest of the season. Then this year, he's just been hit or miss. Some games getting 5, 6, 7 targets, but a lot of the games he's only gotten 1 target and sometimes having a 0 reception. So he's someone that we have seen flashes from. I think that something would have to change in this offense, in this situation, for him to really break out and have a more consistent role. But again, these are young, high upside tight ends. And then at the end of this tier, I have Hunter Henry, just because I feel like he's a step above some of the other veteran producers at the position. Only being 31 years old, he's younger than some guys like Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, and he is scoring about 10.5 fantasy points per game in PPR scoring. He's also tied to the elite Drake May, and so that's exciting as well. Again, with these guys in this C tier, not guys that I necessarily want to be relying on for production. And so if I have a dynasty team where I am pushing for the playoffs, I would rather have one of these older veterans in these latter tiers who is actually producing and is going to benefit my team than one of these upside guys. But if I am not relying on one of these D or E tier tight ends for production right now, then I would very happily move pretty much any of them for any of these players. That is going to bring up the D tier, where we have the productive veterans. Travis Kelce, he's been very productive this year relative to past years. Not quite as productive as peak prime Travis Kelce, but 13.5 points per game in PPR scoring is not bad at all. However, he is 36. This could very well be his last season in the NFL, and if that's the case, then you're getting decent tight end production for 5 or 6 more games. Then we have Juwan Johnson. He has also been fairly fantasy productive. However, he is just not somebody that I'm confident in the future. Really feels like this situation was a bunch of different things aligning perfectly for Juwan Johnson to be productive. So he's not somebody that I want to be relying on moving into the future for tight end production. But right now, he's somebody who is very, very playable in fantasy. You can start, and he can put up low-end tight end 1 numbers for you. Cade Otton, with all the injuries in Tampa Bay, he has been more productive, but he still is just hit or miss. This Tampa Bay offense has been struggling due to all the injuries, and so he is one of the primary targets in the offense, but the offense isn't doing well, so it's kind of a catch-22 with Cade Otton. If you need someone to stream in the tight end position, he is a decent play right now. Next up, we have David Njoku. I think that he has some upside moving forward after this season. He's only scoring 7.68 fantasy points per game this year in PPR scoring and around 8.5 points per game in tight end premium scoring. Njoku's role has shrunk due to fans' appearance in this Cleveland offense, and so that's been unfortunate. But we know that Njoku has a ton of upside, that he's a very talented tight end at the NFL level. especially as a pass catcher with his yards after catch ability. And so my hope is that Njoku gets some opportunity next year, either on a different team or hopefully this Browns team can improve their passing attack in the situation for Njoku. And then we have TJ Hawkinson, another player who is very talented, but just in a poor situation. This J.J. McCarthy-led Vikings offense is just not getting it done through the air. Hawkinson is at 7.6 points per game. He is only 28 years old, and so, he's not a tight end that we have to be worried about his career ending necessarily in the next year or two. However, with J.J. McCarthy at the helm, I just have very little confidence in TJ Hawkinson being productive, and in that case, he is just not someone who has a ton of upside in the near future. I would rather have either someone who is productive now and helping my team, or a younger, higher upside option, or someone like David Njoku, who could see a big value bump this offseason if circumstances were to change for him. And lastly, we are going to have the E tier. Starting off with Evan Ingram. I think Ingram has quietly been a decent producer for fantasy. He's at 6.5 points per game in a PPR format, but in tight end premium scoring, Ingram is a player that just gets a lot of receptions for not very many yards. And so he really is a tight end premium scam type of player. Since he's been back from injury and got ramped up a little bit the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's actually been pretty solid, scoring about 9 to 10 fantasy points per game. And so if you are in a tight end premium league, especially higher tight end premium leagues, I think Evan Ingram is a sneaky add. So next up is Dalton Schultz. He is getting decent volume since week 3. He's had 6 target game, 6 target game, 6 target game, 10 targets, 3, 8, 11, 9, and then 4 in this last week. So he has actually been a pretty decent fantasy producer this year. But I think that with these rookie pass catchers coming on, there's just going to be less pie to go around for someone like Dalton Schultz in this offense. And so projecting him forward, I'm not as excited as his production so far this season would lead me to believe. So he's somebody I have lower down these rankings. Next up is Zach Ertz. He has been fairly fantasy productive as well, 9.5 points per game, but this Washington offense has not been good. Jaden Daniels has been out. He scores much better with Jaden Daniels in the lineup, so that has been helpful at times, but this offense has had its issues, and that has affected the pass catchers, especially Zach Ertz, in this offense. He is 35 years old, so he's another candidate for retirement any given year. And so that's why he is pretty far down these ranks, even though he is and has been fantasy productive in the past. Mike Gesicki is somebody that I think is a very sneaky add right now. He's been injured for most of the year, came back and played his first game back with the Bengals this week, with Joe Burrow coming back and him kind of getting back into the swing of things after missing the majority of the season. He is somebody that I think could just come in and be a very solid low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 kind of producer down the stretch, especially if T. Higgins is going to miss time. Noah Fant has been mildly fantasy productive so far this season at 7 points per game, and I just think Gesicki is much better than Noah Fant is as just a talent and as a pass catcher. And so maybe Gesicki can come in and give like 9, 10, 11 points per game in PPR scoring, and even better in tight end premium. And lastly, we have Mark Andrews. He really is just touchdown or bust. He gets low yardage, low number of catches, but just keeps getting touchdowns. And with his contract coming to a close in Baltimore, I'm not sure if he's going to be a player who gets re-signed. So that is very worrisome. He could very easily go to a situation where the touchdown upside isn't as high. Maybe he's utilized differently, and he could have significantly less upside. He's only 30 years old, so not necessarily a candidate for retirement, but just also someone who I'm not excited about and who has a ton of uncertainty moving into the future. But that wraps up the QB and tight end dynasty rankings for week 13. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.